In particular, the game that we're about to talk about is UGA this weekend. They came in and they went in and they shocked Tennessee and Knoxville in overtime this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yep. So let's talk about some of the things we initially saw in the game. Tennessee, they started off with a very explosive first quarter. Joey Aguilar, he ran that first TD in. You could tell, this volunteer team had a different level of juice to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Even though Aguilar led the FBS in interception last year, this guy, he really came in, with a bunch of confidence in himself, and the coaching staff had a lot of confidence in him.
Yeah.
Um, he ended up completing his first 14 passes. His first 14. He had over 200 yards and two TDs in the first time in the SEC in over 20 years. I mean, just breaking down
Yeah.
that Georgia defense, who's usually notoriously known for not letting that happen.
Yeah. I was getting big when, as quickly as they scored, I was getting when UGA played Alabama last year. I was
Mm-hmm.
getting, oh, this is about to go off the rails real quick, which it kind of did. I'll let you get
Yeah.
into that.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, you saw some of those, explosive plays. One guy I want to mention on the Tennessee side of things, Chris Braswell, right? He was a name we told you needed to watch, right? Didn't realize we were going to have to be watching him that much, but he had a monster 72-yard touchdown reception that was one of Tennessee's three in the first quarter, and only two other teams have been able to score three touchdowns in the first three possessions on a Kirby Smart led team. So that's
Yeah.
that's a pretty good statistic. Your cream rising to the top, basically,
Yeah.
exposing a Kirby Smart defense.
How do you
Um,
think Tennessee was able to be so successful in the first quarter? What were they doing? Did they just catch Georgia off guard, or what was going on?
I think there were so many factors that played into that first quarter and those first three drives. One, the environment. I think the environment definitely, played an initial part into it. I know it got into the nerves of the young UGA team being in a crowd with over 100,000 people.
Yeah.
But the offensive coordinator in Tennessee's offense, they did a really good job of mixing up their plays. You saw a little bit of run, a little bit of passing misdirection, and then they didn't waste any time taking their deep shots when they wanted to. So,
Yeah.
uh, again, hats off to Joey Aguilar and his receiving core because they executed when they needed to.
Yeah, I think Josh Heupel, he gets, obviously the highlights are always going to be like the big throws down the field, but Josh Heupel runs the ball a lot, and that sets up those long plays, right? So
Hmm.
I think they've always been a good running team, and yesterday was no different. Um, Once the second quarter started, UGA was starting to find their rhythm a little bit more on both sides of the ball. They started clawing back at that lead, at that deficit that they were in. They were on a 3rd and 7 when they were down 21-7. Aaron, guess what Mike Bobo dials up? A screen pass to Zachariah
Screen.
Branch, and a
Wow.
screen pass. Yep, and he takes it in for a 36-yard touchdown, blazing fast speed. We'll take a look at some of the touchdowns that Georgia had later on, but yeah, on defense, they were able to make some adjustments to contain Aguilar. In the second quarter, Tennessee went punt, punt, interception. Much different than how the first quarter went. This is also about when you want to start buying some stock in Stockton. He's getting into a flow with his receivers that will continue to become a strength in the second half that we'll talk about in a bit. In any case, at halftime, the score is now 21-17 Tennessee. So Tennessee didn't score any points in the second quarter. At the end of the day, we know UGA won this game. Aaron, I wanted to ask you, what adjustments did they make at the half? What adjustments did UGA make at the half that made them successful?
Sure, sure. So I think at least for one or two drives in the second half, UGA came out and they really were playing their brand of football, right? Being dominant, establishing that run game, and then once you establish that, making plays and developing other types of matchups after establishing that. So yeah, like I said, they started out the third quarter with a touchdown drive. Uh, they had 14 plays, 13 of them were runs. So again, I think they were giving their young offensive line confidence by
Mm-hmm.
controlling the ball and letting them punish the defensive line. A lot of time as an offensive lineman, you have to when you're pass blocking, it's all about protection, protection. But all those runs, they had a chance to really to really set some dominance and really try to bully that defensive line back.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that
UGA
first
after they
drive chewed up the
scored,
entire. I think that first drive that they had chewed up almost an entire half with that one drive.
exactly, right, right.
Yeah,
And so yeah, after that, UGA they start to build somewhat of a lead, right? Their defense even gets another interception before Joey Aguilar hits Brazel again for a deep TD, and he takes the lead 28-27 going into the fourth. So tell me a little bit about what you saw going into the fourth quarter, Mash.
the momentum was going back and forth. I was watching this game on my phone. I was at a friend's housewarming party. I was not
Mm-hmm.
involved in the party at all. I'm just in the kitchen walking back and forth, just watching this thing on my phone, right? Yeah, like I said, momentum shifts on both sides. It was a very, I mean, that's what makes a classic game, I think, momentum shifts and lead changes for both of these teams. They kept going back and forth. And that was the case up until near the end when Gunnar Stockton gets sacked and fumbles the ball, and you start to get this feeling, is this about to happen? Is Tennessee about to make this, a reality? Tennessee gets a field goal after that sack and fumble. Tennessee has UGA on 4th and 6 with 2:32 left in the game. Tennessee's up by 8 points. Now you're starting to think, wow, Josh Heupel and the Volunteers are about to win for the first time in 8 years in front of the loudest recorded group of human beings in history. And then Gunnar Stockton delivers a 28-yard touchdown to London Humphreys. What were all those questions again about Gunnar Stockton not being able to make the big throws? Like, is that something that we're still asking ourselves? All right, anyway, we'll get into that in a bit. The game's not over yet. Tennessee gets the ball back, and they are driving very effectively down the field. They get into field goal range. At this point, I'm in the bathroom. The problem is, for Tennessee, I mean, every time the camera cuts to the kicker, you can see the fear in his eyes. This guy he's not ready for this moment. That and the false start penalty causes him to miss wide right. So game goes into overtime. Tennessee ends their first drive with a field goal. UGA ends up winning the game in overtime with a rushing touchdown with transfer running back Josh McCray. It was a rushing touchdown that needed some video review, but it was a touchdown, and fortunately no players had to dodge any mustard bottles on the way out of the stadium. So UGA wins the game. Instant classic, I think. There are a couple of plays, Aaron, that I wanted to analyze with you. One's a touchdown by Brazel, and one was the touchdown by London Humphreys. So we will get started on this first play. So once again, this will be the Chris Brazel touchdown in the third quarter. So Aaron, before we get started here, this is the offense, this is the defense. Tennessee has the ball. What are you seeing here? Chris Brazel, he's all the way up top. It looks like man-to-man coverage, or what is the offense showing? What is the defense showing here?
Tennessee's looking, like they're in a pretty wide shotgun spread. I can't really tell what Georgia's running in terms of their defense yet, but I think they got a lot of DBs back to be prepared for those explosive plays. Unfortunately, on this one, it didn't end in the way they wanted to. So if you run the play,
let me turn the sound down. All right.
If you run the play, you can kind of see that there's one-on-one coverage. The DB looks like he's in, great position. He just doesn't execute and time his jump correctly. Kind of looks like, Brazel kind of puts a hand on him, but it was determined that, it wasn't anything that was impactful enough to be called offensive PI. Hey, Brazel's a great, 6'5" receiver. Just I expect to see so many more explosive plays like this when he's one-on-one in coverage in future games.
Mm-hmm. In retrospect, what could UGA have done better on this specific play?
Hey, I mean, I think they did everything they wanted to from a play calling standpoint. They had their DB in position. It's supposed to be best on best. Sometimes you just got to execute. You want those plays where you have your DB exactly where he needs to be, and he essentially he did what you want an aggressive DB to do, which is turn around, find the ball, and play receiver. But if you're going to play receiver and try to go after the ball, make sure that you're going to be the one going to get it and embodying off the receiver. And instead,
Gotcha.
he kind of got bodied off and jumped over.
All right, so that's that play. The second play I wanted to go over with you was the touchdown pass by Gunnar Stockton on that fourth down to London Humphreys. Um, Let me turn that off. Okay, so similar question: what is UGA showing on the offensive side? What is Tennessee anticipating that Georgia does? I mean, it is 4th and 6 on Tennessee's side of the field. Only 2 minutes left. Based on their kind of formation, what do you think Tennessee thinks Georgia's going to do versus what actually happens?
Sure. So I think in this play right here, at this point in the game, Tennessee's licking their chops, right? They've disgruntled that offensive line a lot of the second half. They've just not too far back sacked Gunner Stockton, made him fumble the ball. So I think it looks like they're trying to send pressure and not give him any time to make any type of read. I'm sure they're assuming that Georgia's going to try to go for the first down and not necessarily a home run ball, but
Right.
Georgia saw the one-on-one play quickly, and if you run the play, you know, Tennessee sends a couple guys. Gunner sees the one-on-one coverage, and
Mm.
I think that's classic Mike Bobo ball, right? If he's going to throw that deep ball, he's going to want the quarterback to hit that back shoulder, and Gunner placed it perfectly. London Humphreys made an incredible acrobatic move to make the catch. I want you to look at the cornerback on that play, though. You got number
Yeah.
4, Tyler Redmond. He's going to be great. I think he's a true freshman right now for Tennessee, but I
Mm-hmm.
know one of Georgia's key game plans was to attack him just because he's a younger guy that doesn't have much experience, and so they kept going after him, and I think they went after him intentionally on this last play to
Yeah.
try to expose him and put him in the bright lights in the bright moment.
Yeah. That's good. His teammate there kind of picked him up, didn't blame him for it. Not much you can do on a throw like that.
Exactly, and then there was still a lot of ball game left, so I mean, you just got to keep your head up and keep going. But ultimately, we saw that Georgia found a way to win in the end. So yeah, what are some of your overall takeaways from the game, Ash?
Yeah, my biggest takeaway from this game, both defenses. I think UGA's defense probably wasn't where we thought it would be. They were getting exposed a lot, but and Tennessee's defense probably played above where we thought they were. But they're a good defense in their own regard. I'm happy with the performance with both of these quarterbacks. I mean, I think you could say I was pleasantly surprised. Yes, Aguilar hasn't seen an SEC defense before, except that he's seeing one of the SEC's best defenses in practice in Knoxville week in and week out, right? And I think he was prepared for this one on Saturday. I was pleasantly surprised with Gunnar Stockton. I mean, he's been limited in what the game plan has been and what he's been showing us in terms of his throwing prowess. But he put that to bed. I think he had 3 players with long receptions of 45, 36, and 31 yards. 3 different players. So he was making those deep throws. He was making the throws when it counted, and that was paramount for UGA's win over Tennessee. I think the most ironic part of this entire game, obviously, if you've been on social media, this whole stadium noise thing. Tennessee's the loudest stadium. Tennessee is the best stadium in the world. I mean, I've never been, but I believe it. It looks great. It's funny enough about that stadium noise that Tennessee actually ended regulation with a false start. Not because of the crowd noise, but they ended with a false start and then they missed that go-ahead field goal. Even with the crowd noise and even with all the issues on offensive line with injuries and stuff, UGA had 0 false starts the entire game. So those are my key takeaways. Once again, UGA wins this one in overtime. All time classic for sure. I'll be taking another watch later today.
Absolutely.